Good afternoon, everybody. This is Debbie here. Today's show is going to discuss how I feel about the celebration of Easter, Easter Sunday. Easter Sunday is all about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And you want to ask yourself, did it really happen? Did Jesus Christ really rise from the dead? Well, in order to answer that, let's go back 2,000 years ago, that eerie night in the Garden of Gethsemane, as a bloodthirsty mob came to arrest Jesus Christ. He was brought before Pontius Pilate, and there in plain view, Jesus Christ of Nazareth was spit upon, cursed at, laughed at, whipped, beaten, branded a blasphemer, and sentenced to die by the most extreme, shameful form of capital punishment ever devised, crucifixion. Jesus Christ basically died a curse. He died as a criminal. He died in open shame and in disgrace, and in the eyes of the world, Jesus Christ basically died a failure. And there stood his apostles in stunned unbelief. Here was their hope. Here was their leader hanging on a cross. Here were 11 men that had forsaken everything to follow this man. They believed in him for 3 years. And can you imagine for a moment what was going through their heads? Didn't we witness him healing the sick? Didn't we see him walk on water, raising people from the dead? Did we not see him calm the storm? And to have it all end like this? That night, there were 11 men defeated, confused, and to say that they were sad is a very gross understatement. They had given up everything. And then to die like that, beaten, smitten, humiliated, guilty, a blasphemer. And then there was the Apostle Peter, the one who had just boasted a day earlier, "I will never forsake thee." And there he was on that night, standing in the mob, defeated, confused, and hurt. And Jesus was dead. He was crucified as a blasphemer. One of the women in the crowd had seen Peter and said, "Hey, don't you know him?" And he said, "No, I do not." And then one of the guards, I believe, one of the Roman guards said to Peter, "Don't you know this man? I saw you with him." "No, I don't know him." They all forsook him and they fled. But something happened. Something happened to that group of men that were frightened and humiliated, scared for their lives. Less than 2 months later, they went back into Jerusalem, boldly proclaiming at the threat of their own death that Jesus Christ was alive. What in the world could have transformed those confused, fearful men into the bold lions that they became? What had they seen? What had they heard? What did they know? Was it that the beatings and the threats of jail and death and torture could not what was it about that could not silence them? Well, it's very simple. The resurrection of Jesus Christ. They witnessed it. Just imagine how you would feel if your own father or your brother came back. I mean, wouldn't you just want to run around and just tell everybody? These men went so far as to seal their testimony with their blood. They all ended up dying horrible, horrible martyrs' deaths. Peter was crucified upside down. And for what? For a lie? A lie? You don't believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ? I find it very hard not to believe that grown men in the history book, the most holy of all history books, that big of a group of men went out, gave up their own lives, put their lives on the line for a lie. No, that's impossible. You cannot find one group of men in the history of the universe who would do that. Not today, nor any other time in the history of the universe, ever. Okay, then there was a man called Saul of Tarsus. Saul of Tarsus, as I spoke many times, was a horrible hater of Christianity. Killing Christians and wiping out, exterminating Egypt from Christians was his passion. Saul of Tarsus was one of Christianity's most rabid persecutors. He went after them with a vengeance, beat them, and yet one day, while traveling on a dusty road to a city called Damascus, Saul, burning with vengeance, with documents in his hand, authorizing him to capture all of the followers of the now gone Jesus Christ. What happens? Now, I've always said that I believe that God works through science. I believe that when Saul looked up, he felt an overwhelming presence of the Holy Spirit, and he was blinded by the scorching sun, maybe even a solar eclipse. I'm not sure. However, he was thrown into a sort of an extra room in the city, and one thing led to another. There was a gentleman that came to him and said, "You have been chosen by Jesus Christ to spread his word." He became Paul the Apostle of the Impossible. Paul the Apostle, okay? One of the greatest Christians that ever lived. And why? What happened to this man? man. What could have transformed Paul to dedicating his life to spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ? There is only one possible explanation: the resurrection of Jesus Christ. They're not going to go around and spread the news of a guy that's now dead. They were absolutely elated over the fact that they knew that he had risen, his spirit had risen, and had gone on to live with his Father, to be seated at the right hand. That is what Easter is all about. You know, Professor Thomas Arnold, former chair of history at Oxford, the chair of history at Oxford, and author of famous books such as The History of Rome, was educated in the study of historical facts. Professor Arnold was quoted as saying, "I have been used for many years to study the histories of other times and to examine and weigh the evidence of those who have written about them. And I know of no fact in the history of mankind which is proved by better and fuller evidence of every sort than the great sign which God has given us, that Christ died and rose from the dead." After investigating the evidence of the resurrection of Lord, there exists such overwhelming positive, negative, factual, circumstantial, that no intelligent person in the world, to deny the resurrection of Jesus Christ, you would need to almost close your eyes to the overwhelming facts of history. And that is a very, very dangerous and serious thing to do. I am Debbie with you until next time. Go out and be the person that you want to be. You have to fake it until you make it. I'm Debbie. Be kind to one another. I will see you next time.